Hi everyone, welcome back to Better Business Conversations. My name is Brittany Andrician. I'm a business success coach with Practice Better. I'm joined today by Lisa Simone Richards, who is a publicist for online coaches. So hello Lisa, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you for having me, and I'm excited to share it with your guest today.
Yeah, so Lisa Simone Richards, for those of you who don't know, she's a publicist for online coaches who want to get featured in magazines, on stages, TVs, podcasts, and other major media. So she helps them go from invisible to in demand with strategies, that help you build your business by leveraging the audience of others. So she helps her clients get the credibility they need to kind of have people run to work with them. So thank you so much for being here today. We're going to be talking all about podcasts for publicity today. And Lisa's going to teach us about the ABCs of publicity. So I'm going to let you take it away and share with our community all about that. So thank you.
Thanks, Brittany. Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be invited to join you today. As Brittany shared, my name is Lisa Simone Richards, and I'm a publicity and visibility strategist, and I primarily work with online coaches. What I do with my clients is I help them get more exposure for their business. So if you've ever felt like, you're constantly posting stories on social media and you're tagging, but is it going anywhere? And you're looking for a new way to get exposure to a new audience without necessarily spending money on Facebook ads or paid traffic in other forms, what I like to do is help my clients, get visibility by leveraging other people's audiences. So let me share with you what I mean by that. Think about this. There is somebody out there who has thousands, if not tens of thousands or more of your ideal clients that you would love to work with. So rather than constantly focusing on creating content on your own channels, which of course is very important for you to be doing, I really encourage my clients to leverage other people's audiences. So for some of my clients like Jennifer Nagel, who is a personal trainer, she does a lot of articles with a website called 𝗕𝗂𝘁𝘁𝗲𝗄, which I'm sure a number of you are familiar with. She's done 4 articles with the website since September 2020, and at the time of recording this, it's February 2021. I remember one of her articles that got shared within 1 week got over 2,200 shares on the 𝗕𝗂𝘁𝘁𝗲𝗄 website. So if you've ever done that on your personal blog, please shoot me an email and let me know. But what Jennifer is able to do is get a lot more eyes on her and on her business. And what I think a lot of business owners don't know is that this kind of exposure doesn't necessarily cost you money. So today, what I'm excited to share with you is very specifically, how can you get featured on podcasts? For a lot of business owners who are currently growing and starting to climb the ladder of publicity, which I'll explain a little bit later during our conversation, I think podcasts are a phenomenal way to start getting in front of your ideal clients, and here's why. So why don't we start off by me defining 3 different types of media. So you have paid media, you have social media, and you have earned media. So let me break those down for you. First off, let's talk about paid media. This is where you are paying for Facebook ads or Google ads. And things I love about paid traffic and paid ads is that you can laser target in on who you want to focus on, the demographic, the geography, the interests. It's very powerful. But keep in mind, number 1, think about your behavior as a consumer. When you're watching a television show or something on YouTube, when you're reading a magazine, scrolling on a website, you know when paid content comes up and you are quick to probably scroll past it because you recognize that's not the content you logged on for. So remember, your clients, when they're scrolling through their Facebook feed, are having the same experience. So, and another thing I like to highlight with paid content is remember that when you turn your ad spend off, your content disappears. So that's some of the pros and the cons of paid media. The next type of media I want to talk about is social media. This, of course, you're super familiar with, whether you're posting on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest, any of those other platforms. And yes, I have Ginger the cat joining us in the background here. Social media is powerful because when before have we had the opportunity to slide in the DMs of prospects and ideal clients? It is so cool that we can have that one-on-one conversation without a barrier between us. We can create the kind of content that we want want. We can publish it the way we want. We can publish it when we want. We're not at somebody else's will. So social media is a really, really powerful way to become the content creator. However, what I want you to keep in mind with social media as well is you're typically getting in front of the same leads over and over again. So those people who are members of your group on Facebook, who like your page, who follow you on Instagram, or whatever the social network is. So you're limited to the number of followers that you have. And also keep in mind, you're also at the mercy of the algorithm. So not all 2,000 of your followers are going to see that Instagram post. Maybe 150 of them will. So the exposure that you have on social can be limited. And the thing that I hear from people over and over again is that I feel like I'm constantly doing stories and posts, but it's not necessarily going anywhere. So that's paid media and that's social media. So now let's move into the third type of media, which is earned media. This is when you log on to the coaches that you look up to and you see their websites and they have as seen on logos above the fold on their website, featured on Forbes, NBC, whatever the media outlet is. Maybe they've been featured on a number of different podcasts. So with earned media, this is the highlight. Number one, you do not typically pay for this kind of exposure. So when you see someone sharing their latest article in Forbes, or you see somebody who's done an interview on the local morning show, or for people listening to this recording today, if you're watching or listening to somebody on a podcast, they typically have not paid for that type of exposure. And keep in mind the difference of perception when it comes to earned media. So paid media is saying, hey, I have this great service or product and I can help you. Social media, you're creating content and sharing something similar. Earned media, on the other hand, creates a third-party endorsement. So now you have somebody else saying, hey, look at her, she's awesome. Hey, look at them, they're a great coach. Hey, look at him, he is amazing at what he does. So think about, again, your own interactions with how you invest in brands that you want to work with, in coaches that you want to work with. You're looking for testimonials. You're looking for credibility. Where have they been featured outside of their own platforms? So I always want my clients to think about what is your behavior as a consumer. A story that I always love to tell is when I went for dinner with a few girlfriends a few years ago. I think there were maybe 4 of us at dinner. And at the end of the night, as ladies often do, we whipped out our lip gloss after our meal. And what was interesting is, I can't remember what year this is to date us, but we were using fresh sugar lip glosses, if anybody remembers those. And 3 of the 4 of us happened to have fresh sugar lip glosses, different colors. But girlfriend number 4 was like, how come all of you guys have that? What are you using? So that is the power of a third-party endorsement, because all of her friends were using it, and not because she's a sheep, she went out and bought it, but she trusted that product because all of us liked it. So for her, it was a no-brainer. She trusts us and she trusts our judgment, so she figured she might like it as well. So you want people giving you third-party endorsements, and that's the power of earned media, and that's the kind of power that you can harness when you get on somebody else's podcast. You come on as a trusted expert because they've chosen to highlight you. With paid media, with social media, anybody can get it. But with earned media, that's only given to a few select coaches, and I want you to be one of that handful because your clients are going to look at you in a different way. Think about going to a conference back when we did that and how you would look at the person who is sitting beside you in the audience versus the person who is delivering content from the stage. I want you to be that person who's delivering the content because the way that you are positioned is very different from the person sitting beside you saying how great they are. So today we're going to be diving into using podcasts for publicity. And before we go into the teaching content, why don't I share a little bit about who I am with you? So again, if this is the first time we're meeting, my name is Lisa Simone Richards, and I'm a publicist and visibility strategist based in Toronto. And I work with clients around the world to help them get the kind of exposure we were talking about before. My clients have been featured on Forbes, NBC, oh my gosh, I can't even name them all, the Huffington Post, Globe and Mail. It's a very, very long list of magazines and websites, etc. And I teach my clients how to use the power of publicity to get more eyes on their business and, of course, enroll more clients. So I remember getting into this back when I was probably about 18 years old, my first year of university. I remember sitting at lunch with a girl who was in 4th year and about to graduate. She was going to PR school. And this was in about 2000, sometime between 2002, 2006, Sex and the City was in its heyday. And remember Samantha Jones, she made it look super cool. So that was the moment I decided to go into publicity. So after university, I started working in fashion and beauty for a few years, working behind the scenes in magazines, living that Devil Wears Prada lifestyle, really seeing what it's like when different companies were sending products for publicity to publications like fashion magazines. I also worked in an agency where I was working with clients like Staples, Crayola, Virgin Mobile, and helping them land front page of the newspaper, TV segments, not podcasts at the time, but various magazines. So that was a really fun 4 years working in an agency with huge international brands. But what happened around 2009 is I was doing a women's only boot camp with one of my girlfriends here in Toronto, and we were having the most amazing results. It was outdoor in the summer, the music was awesome, the instructor, her name was Natasha, she was great, and of course we were getting results from the program. So when I got an email from that boot camp saying, hey, we're looking to hire a publicist, and they were paying twice what I made in the agency and I'd only have to work on one client, Lisa jumped ship really, really quickly to work there. So over the course of 4 years working at that boot camp, we went from 30 locations here in Ontario to more than 100 across Canada. I helped the company grow their revenues from $400,000 a year to over $4 million a year. And the way that we were doing this was constantly winning awards. The best boot camp in the city. We were having our CEO featured for the best small medium business. We were getting on television segments every month. We were getting in magazines all the time. She built a celebrity status name for herself using the media. And that's what I work with my clients to do now. What I found in 2015 is that there were a lot of people who were leaving their safe 9-to-5 jobs to do something that they were passionate about, to open a studio, to become a health or wellness coach, to really make a difference in people's lives. But these people, these coaches didn't necessarily know how to market their business. And the worst thing that I can think of for a client is for them to stay the best kept secret, because if nobody knows who you are, they cannot work with you. So it is absolutely your responsibility to make sure that your name is getting out there. And now what I like to do is support growing and established coaches in getting that kind of publicity for themselves. So now that you know a little bit more about the person who's going to be delivering this teaching content today, I want to share with you how to start getting featured on podcasts. So let's dive into the meat of the training. The first thing that you want to think about is, what are the podcasts that my ideal client is listening to? So there's a distinction between what are the shows that you enjoy listening to as a professional. So maybe you're listening to some very high tier wellness and health podcasts where they're getting into the details, but maybe your client is exploring nutrition and wellness or whatever your specialty is for the very first time. So you're not necessarily going to want to be pitching those high level podcasts because that's not what your client is listening to. So one of the things that I recommend to my clients to do is check in. Talk to 3 of your absolute favorite clients that you would love to recruit more of and ask them, what podcasts are you listening to? What types of shows are you gravitating towards? Because that'll help you start finding some shows that you could potentially be interviewed on. Think about who are some of the names in the industry that I look up to. I'm not a health or wellness coach, but I do love 𝗕𝗂𝘶𝗵𝗵, and I will probably listen to any podcast that she's on. She's a celebrity health coach who made the 𝗕𝗶𝘀𝗵𝗵𝗿. Look her up. So think about who are the names I look up to in the industry, and then what podcasts have they been on? Could it make sense for you to be on those shows as well? We hear that success leaves clues all the time. Don't make it difficult. Alternatively, you can use Google as your friend. So I have to say, one of the things I always want to be concerned about on these trainings is not to fire hose you with too much information, but I want to make sure that you're getting as much information as I can possibly deliver so that you can make a difference in your business. So if you're not already writing notes or you haven't already upgraded to be able to get the recordings of this, make sure you do that so you can come back to this. So again, let's just do a really quick recap. You want to check in with your clients to see what shows they're listening to. You want to think about who are some of the names in your industry that you aspire to follow in their footsteps in their career. What are the podcasts they're getting featured on? You could, follow the success clues that they've left, and get featured on their shows. You can also go on Google and look up shows either in your industry, so, health and nutrition podcasts, or maybe think about that demographic of your client. Are they new moms? Maybe it would make more sense to get featured on a mom podcast rather than falling in with a pool of nutritionists on a health podcast. Are your clients ambitious career women in their 30s? who are single. There are podcasts for people or women just in that category as well. So think beyond your specialty and think about who is the client you want to attract. So that's number one. Think about the shows you want to get featured on. So why don't we maybe do this as an example, talking through one of the clients that I've worked with to help get featured on podcasts and bring clients into her business, because I think if we chart that, it'll give you a really good example to follow. So one of the clients that I work with, her name is 𝗕𝗂𝘁𝘁𝗵, and she is a preconception health coach. So I always tell people a little too much about Lisa, so here we go. Lisa's getting married in September of this year, and I know that my future husband and I will be looking to get pregnant in early 2022. So I'm very interested in doing everything I can to prepare my body. So Nora happens to work with women in this demographic. I love that she hired me as her coach because I'm her ideal client. So she wanted to find out, where are women who are looking to get pregnant featured? Her personal story is that she's in her late 30s. She is single, and she is going to be a mother no matter what. And she's looking for other women who might want this information to support her. So let's go through the trail that Nora and I went through to figure out where she should get featured as a preconception health coach. So we're going to use the Google method today, where we simply just do a search to look for the appropriate shows. So what I'm going to do is open up a screen share. We're going to go on Google. Let's actually do this version of a screen share so I don't have to keep toggling. And we're going to go into a Google window first. And let's look up fertility podcast. That would make sense for a preconception health coach. So we see the fertility podcast is actually one of the first shows that comes up. We see Fertility Friday, Fertility Wellness. It's great that you can literally just scroll here and come up with a bunch of shows that are good possibilities. Fertile Mind Radio, Fertility Hour, so many different things. Note the Fertility Hour hasn't published since January 2019. We'll get into that in a second. So I'm going to start off with the fertility podcast. I think that's a great idea. So we found a show that would make a lot of sense for our ideal client. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the name of that podcast and we're going to go ahead and find it in iTunes. So I'm going to change my screen over to iTunes, and let's hope this works easily and smoothly. Typing in the fertility podcast. Fantastic. So many options have come up here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the fertility podcast. And now I'm going to take you through the process to figure out, is this the right show for me to get featured on, to find out if they're interviewing people. And we're also going to do a little bit of stalking to figure out how to find the hosts of the different shows. So let me take you through my process, but I need this to work for me. So this one is not bringing up any information, but what was really cool is when I did this show, it did come up with some others. So let's not be attached to the fertility podcast per se and see what other options came up when we did this search. I feel like sometimes my iTunes goes to sleep and I have to refresh it. So fingers crossed it's awake today. Okay, we are going to do a shutdown and a restart on the iTunes to see if we can get it to move a little bit quicker. Let's try that again. And maybe this time I'll start with Fertility Friday because we know we saw that come up last time. All right, so we are going to look up Fertility Friday. So let's take you through the process I go through to help my clients identify, is this the right show, and find the right person. And you guys are literally getting the training that my clients pay for. So first thing I go to is I scroll over through the different columns, moving through name, time, and the first thing I look at is released. Remember when we searched on Google, we saw a show come up, but it didn't record since January 2019? There is no point to pitching a show that is no longer in existence. So the first thing I do before I even go through any of the show's content is check the last time they aired an episode. I can see that this show has done 2 episodes so far in February. They did 5 in January. I think I see another 5 in December. So what that tells me is they put out weekly content, 52 episodes a year. That means they're looking for a lot of content. So hopefully they interview guests on this show. So once I've confirmed that they're still doing new episodes, the next thing I'm going to move over into is the name of the episode, because I'm looking specifically to see, does this host do interviews? So I'm looking to see with so-and-so name as an expert. So we see that there's an episode here with Mark McAfee. We see Lisa and Annie. We see an interview with Amy Ropp there. Lisa and Natalie, we see a few different names. Denise Weisner, she's interviewed. So the whole point of doing this exercise is just to make sure this is not a solo cast, because some hosts have podcasts where it's just them talking and it wouldn't make sense to pitch them for an interview. So we can see, number one, it's releasing new episodes frequently, and the show is interviewing hosts or guests, sorry. So now that we've deciphered those 2 things, now I'm actually going to look at the description under from the provider. So now just taking a quick second to read through it. The host, Lisa, founder of Fertility Friday, good name, Lisa, is passionate about women's health, specifically the areas of fertility, hormone-free birth control, conception, pregnancy, delivers weekly in-depth interviews with a wide variety of special guests covering fertility awareness, birth control, menstrual health, hormonal health, pregnancy, and much more. Fantastic. This is a great show for Nora to get featured on. So we've cleared off that they're doing episodes, they do interviews, that the content makes sense. So now what I'm going to do is scroll over to the left of the page, just under the graphic here, where it says website, because now that I know this is a good show to get featured on, how do we reach out to the host, whose name is Lisa, which we learned here, to send her an email and say, hey, would love to be on the podcast. So I start off by clicking on website. Now, fingers crossed this is going to work. A few different ways to creep like a rock star and find anybody's email address. So the first thing is there a contact us button somewhere on this site? So usually that's kind of at the end of the page, and hopefully I don't have the window with me covering anything up here. Here we go, bottom left, we see contact. Great that they have some guidelines before hitting any sort of submission. We see that specify what you're interested in talking about on the show. Cool, taking guests. And when people tell you how to submit to them, pay attention to it. Like I personally love to send emails over using submission forms like these ones, but they said it clearly that that's what they're looking for. So I'm going to respect and honor that. So that was pretty easy. We found a contact form. Let me give you some other suggestions in case an email address just doesn't come up that easily. So up here on my address bar, to the right, you can see that I have a few different extensions here in my browser, and I personally use Google Chrome. So we've got my Boomerang, my Asana. This fox here that you see in gray, this is a Google Chrome extension that is called hunter.io. Again, it's called hunter.io, and you can get a free version of this tool. What it does is crawl various websites to see if there's an email address associated with it. So when you land on a website where there is an email address associated with it, this is going to turn orange. However, in this example, it's not bringing up the address, say lisa@fertilityfriday.com, which is why it's not popping up in orange. So maybe we can go through another example to see if we can get hunter.io to bring up an orange email found. Third option, if it's not in a contact page, if hunter.io is not finding it, we're going to go to Instagram. Now, this trick only works on your phone. It doesn't work if you look someone, oh, this isn't my cat. My cat's orange, but this is a great backdrop. Changes animals all the time. So this doesn't work on your computer, but it does work from your phone. So I am going to open up my Instagram app. And I am going to need to know what Lisa's Instagram handle is because I want to find her on here. So her Instagram handle, as we can see in the bottom left of my page, is Fertility Friday. So just going to give that a little search here. Promise I'm not sending text messages. So I found Lisa on here, and here's what's really cool. So when you look at her Instagram profile, and fingers crossed this is going to focus, you can see it has that email button. So when I click on it, now what it's automatically going to do is bring that up in the in an email there. So sorry to shade you and put your email address out there, Lisa, but I mean, you did have email available on your Instagram profile, so it's nothing private. So those are 3 different ways you can find the right person's email address. So let's kind of do a quick recap of what we covered so far, because I know I can talk about a lot and I can go very quickly. So what we started off by doing was, number 1, identifying what is the show that makes sense for you to get featured on. We talked about asking your clients. We talked about doing a Google search. And we talked about one other thing too, but I don't remember what that is right now. So hopefully you guys are taking better notes and I'm rolling off the top of my head. So those are some ways to find the right podcasts. Then we went into iTunes. We went to make sure that the show is still recording. We also found out from the title of the episodes that they're doing interviews. We then looked at the description from the provider to make sure that the show is a good fit. We scrolled to the left to check that website, and then we found their email address. So here's what I want to show you next. We're going to go back into iTunes in 1 second. You just did a little bit of work to find one host on a podcast. Now, imagine if you found 10 different shows and took this work and just did some batch work. So instead of stopping at one podcast, let's just go down what I like to call the iTunes rabbit hole and find a few more shows for you. So I'm going to bring back the share screen. We're going to go back to iTunes. We are going to hope it's playing nicely today again, and we don't have to do another restart. So one of my favorite things to do in iTunes is go down what I call the iTunes rabbit hole. Weekend Fertility Friday is a great option. iTunes is really good about saying what other shows listeners are subscribed to. So I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom of this page, all the way down. She has a lot of episodes. And at the very bottom, you see listeners also subscribe to Practically Fertile, Get Pregnant Naturally, Fertility Warriors, Mastering Your Fertility, Period Party could be relevant, Fertile Ground, Beat Infertility. How cool is it that there are all these other shows handed to you on a platter that makes sense to get featured on? So let's just start going down that rabbit hole one by one. We're not going to go down 20 shows today, but let's just go through the exercise one more time so that you can get into the practice of how we do this. Let's start with Practically Fertile. So, Practically Fertile, last episode aired August 14, 2020. It's February 2021, a good 5 months later. So that tells me I'm not going to bother with that show because they're not still recording episodes consistently. So let's go to the bottom of the page again. Let's see what Fertility Warriors is all about. Okay, cool. So we see release date, 2 episodes in February. Now I'm looking at the left and I'm seeing a lot of interviews that look like solo casts, but I can see at the bottom, episode 13 is an interview with Dr. Melinda Lee. I can see episode 14 is Effortless Effort with Michelle Orovitz. So we see that this person is doing interviews with other people. Good signs. Now let's move into from the provider description to see if this could be a good fit for Nora. Yep, a lot of this also looks really relevant to the kind of person that Nora wants to speak to. The host name is Robin Birkin. So let us hit up Robin's website to find her email address to say, hey, Robin, have some valuable information I'd love to share with your listeners. Would it be a fit to have me come on your show? And what I'm hoping is going to happen this time is that the Hunter app works. Yes, it does. So I can show you what that looks like. So again, remember, we talked about the hunter.io extension that I have here. This time it's orange. Last time it was gray. So when I click on the link, now it brings me hello@robinbirkin.com. So I have found Robin's email address, direct contact. How fun is it that it's that quick? So we've talked about a few different ways you can stalk like a pro, as I like to say. So great, with that, we just have another show to add to our media list. So typically, what do I mean by that? I have a Google sheet where I have the name of the show, the name of the host, a link to their website, and their email address. And you could just sit for 1 hour and come up with 20 of these different shows. And all you need to do, I promise, is come up with one really good pitch that you can send to multiple shows and then sit back and wait. So what happened with Nora when she started podcasts in August of 2020, if I have that correct? So she was booking a few different shows. I believe she did outreach to about 20 different fertility shows. Again, very specific, the audience that she's pitching. I believe she got about 7 yeses back. So 4 shows were recorded in 2020. She's recorded 3 of them so far in 2021. And now these episodes are coming out like maybe 1 to 2 a month. And here's what's really cool. At the end of an episode, the host always says to Nora, Nora, how can our listeners find you? And she shares a link to her lead magnet. So now Nora is growing her email list. The show host often does an Instagram story with Nora to, hype up the episode before it goes live. So they get to go on Instagram with one another. And what happens? Nora gets a bunch of new followers from this podcast host. And Nora and I have a little Instagram story strategy that we do. So when people land on her page, we can get them, booking calls with her, signing up for different webinars and trainings that she's offering so that they can get to know her. And the coolest part about having worked with Nora from August up until now in February of 2021 is that Nora's goal has been to get to 4 new clients every month consistently to hit some financial milestones in her business. It's February and she is blowing it out of the water. I think she's doing at least 5 with a ton of proactive effort anymore. Now, as long as she books a good 4 or 5 podcasts every month, she knows that she's going to have inbound leads coming to her. So how cool is it that she's gone from constantly feeling like she's chasing clients to now just recording a few podcast episodes every month and having traffic flow to her. And on her website, now she can say Nora 𝗕𝗂𝘁𝗵 as featured on this podcast, and this podcast. And what's really cool is she's also building her publicity strategy. She's also getting featured on various websites. So she can reach out to websites like 𝗕𝗶𝗀𝗵.com, a website for moms, and she can talk about her methodologies. And when she's pitching that website, she can say, oh, by the way, check me out on these podcasts if you want to get a sense of how I present. Really establishing her credibility, not that she's just some homegrown coach with a shingle up, she has credibility. When clients search her name because they're thinking of investing thousands of dollars to work with her, not only is she on her website and her own social platforms, she's showing up on all these different websites, on all these different podcasts, which creates a level of trust that Nora's not just anybody, she's somebody who the media trusts. And what's really cool to see is her partnerships are now evolving. Just a week or 2 ago, she worked with Fertility Brand. They have an app and a device on the market, and she did a series of Instagram stories that got featured on their account, then sending more traffic to her. So what I hope I've illustrated to you today is the power of leveraging somebody else's audience, showing up like the expert that I know that you are, so that you can attract more people into your world. And what's really awesome is you're building a name for yourself and you are not taking out your credit card to do it. So at the end of this interview, what I want you to do is, I know Brittany has a link somewhere on this page for you to be able to get access to my download on how to actually pitch these podcasts. But what you can do now is actually start building that podcast list, the right shows, the hosts, and their email addresses. And the only next thing that you need to do is reach out to them and make the ask. So with that, my hope is that you got a lot from today's training, that you're on task to start getting publicity. And I hope that you're going to not just listen to this information, but take what I used and put it into practice, because this could be bringing thousands or tens of thousands of dollars into your business every single month. So with that, I hope that was very helpful for you. And Brittany, I'd love to welcome you to come back in and close us off.
Thank you so much. That was incredible. I was taking tons of notes during the own session. There's just so many pieces that I feel like I'm going to come back to again and again. But for those of our viewers that are watching this and feel like this is such great information, but they may be feeling like I'm too new for this, or I'm just getting established, what would you say, what stage should somebody be at in their coaching business before they feel like they're at a place where they can start to do this outreach?
Yeah. And you know what? I think for every client that I work with, whether they have never been featured anywhere before, maybe they've done a handful of interviews in the past, or even if they're regularly featured TV experts, that imposter complex comes up regardless. Who am I to put myself out there? Somebody else has talked about this already. Do I know enough? And the answer is always yes. Yes, you know enough. Yes, you deserve to put yourself out there. And something that I often have my clients do when we start our work together is create what I call a not so humble brag sheet. So what I have them do is grab a piece of paper and write out, how much money have you invested in your education? You know, your undergrad, your postgrad, your certifications, the conferences you attend. How much time have you invested? How many many years have you spent doing what you do? What results have you created for yourself or for your clients? And when you start looking at this cumulative list of all the things that you've accomplished, my hope is that you're going to remind yourself of who you are. Something I often say to people who have been in the industry forever and they feel like they're kind of like a dinosaur here, I'll say, fantastic, you have a knowledge of what works and what doesn't. You know what I mean? You have that like wide-facing perspective. Whereas if you're somebody who just graduated from a certification program a week ago, cool, you are on the cutting edge with the latest information and a very fresh perspective that you can bring to the industry. So it does not matter where you fall in terms of like how long you've been in business. It's just, do you have the knowledge and the backup to talk about something with an educated point of view? Because you know what? I'll come and do an interview with you, Brittany, and talk about how to get on podcasts, but I'm not going to come and do an interview with you on how to do accounting and taxes. That's not my specialty. So my guess is if you've gone through the certification, you have a specialty. So just be confident in putting that out there.
Yeah, you kind of perfectly led into my next question, which is, can you talk about maybe the importance of coaches having like a really niche down specialization? Like, how does that help them in this journey of getting publicity and getting onto podcasts? I know a lot of people are really fearsome of pigeonholing themselves, or so they think, into, you know, a really specific group of people or a pain point they're hoping to solve. But maybe you can talk about, from your vantage point, what a niche allows for when getting publicity.
Yeah, and you know, what's really cool is I like kind of sticking to the same story throughout. So let's go back to Nora, who I talked about through this entire training. So what's really fun is Nora was literally one of my first paying clients when I started as an independent practitioner. So back in 2015, I remember she and I went to a coffee shop back when people did those things. And she was actually working as a general health coach. So she is a health coach. She's a yoga practitioner. She has yoga clients. She's preconception health coach. She has a ton of certifications behind her and ways that she does practice. However, when you try to be one thing for everybody, you attract no one. When she says, I'm a preconception health coach for women who want to get pregnant, if she could work with 1% of people in Canada, if she could work with 1% of people in Ontario, if she could work with 1% of people in Toronto, she legit could not handle that much business. So I want people to not be afraid to really narrow down and speak to the person you want to speak to, because they will hear you, they will be attracted to you, and they will ask you more questions. Another story that I can share that I always remember was going to an event for speakers in 2017. And because back at the time I worked very much with health, wellness, and fitness practitioners, naturally they just gravitate towards me. So people would meet me and they'd be like, oh, I'm a trainer, whatever. And I was like, that's very cool. But one woman, her name was 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝘁𝗲𝗿. Like, I've literally never looked her up since then, but I always remember her name. She said to me, I'm a personal trainer who works with runners who want to shave 10 minutes off their marathon time. And I was doing my first half marathon that August. So guess who I was interested in? Like, guess whose name I still remember to this day, because she did something so specific. And if 𝗕𝗂𝘀𝘁𝗃 only worked with people who ran marathons in her state, she still couldn't handle that much business. So it's all about that perspective shift. Being super clear will attract people to you. Being really vague and saying, I'm a trainer, like, that's nice. But like, when I hear someone, I'm a trainer who helps people like run faster, who helps their knees not hurt, I'm like, tell me more, that's me.
Yeah, that's amazing. So for someone who wants to get started in this, you've given people so many great action steps that they can literally start implementing as soon as they hop off of this. But when people are reaching out, should they have any kind of, expertise that they've established beforehand? So whether that's social media that they've put in some time to build as kind of their portfolio, if we want to call it that, or some blog posts, do you find that those things are helpful when you're pitching podcasts and kind of getting your name out there?
Yeah, I think for most practitioners, a lot of us develop our own methodology. We have some sort of a system or a process. So start with that as your podcast pitch content, rather than thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to create? So as Nora and I were working together, and again, I'm going to be her, like, I've prepaid for her program to start in October, so I'm her ideal client. As she and I were talking, I was learning more about how I should be eating for where I am in my cycle. So we developed her 4 R's to get pregnant, her 4 R's of eating to get pregnant. Again, this is something she was already practicing. So we just packaged it really nicely. And then that was the idea that we were able to pitch out. So we were consistent with something very specific that we were using. And I think there was another part of your question that I may have veered off of. Could you kind of remind me what that was so I can go back to it?
Yeah, when you're putting together these pitches and you're reaching out to these podcasts, host.
Got it. Sorry. Sometimes you just have to say one word to jog my memory and I got it. So yes, I'm a big believer in being intentional with your content. So if you know you have an aspiration of being featured on a live morning TV show, so a lot of people want to be on breakfast television. You had an edition out in Calgary. We have one here in Toronto. I say to people, great, then go live on Instagram and Facebook. So you can get accustomed to doing live recordings, tripping over your words, not getting to make it perfect, doing a smooth comeback. And when you're sending a pitch, link them to that Instagram video so they can see how you function live. You know, if you're doing if you're interviewing on a podcast, chances are you don't have your own podcast, but you can link to a blog post, you can do a video, you can create the kind of content that supports what you want to talk about on another channel. Leave that as a story on one of your highlights, link people to it. Hey, want to get a sense of how I speak to it? Here's like a 2-minute video that I did. And that can really help them get some good connection and make them want to bring you in.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I think that's kind of all the questions that I have. You have just given us so much information to kind of take action on. I'm sure people's heads are just like swimming with motivation now. Their wheels are turning. So Lisa, where can people go to connect with you further and learn more about you?
Yeah, so for those people who are thinking about where to start getting publicity, is it a podcast? Should it be on a Facebook Live with somebody else, an Instagram story? Is it writing for magazines? There are just so many different options. I love to invite people to take my quiz, Uncover the Best Way to Get the Word Out About Your Coaching Business. That quiz is available at www.lisasimonerichards.com/quiz. Again, it's lisasimonerichards.com/quiz. And Brittany, what I'd also love to invite you to do, because I don't have a pretty easy URL for this one, is I also have a download called 7 Pillars of the Perfect Pitch. So over the course of the last 45 minutes, I shared with you how to find the right shows, how to find the host, and how to find their email address. Now that you got that, now what? You have to actually send the email inviting yourself, or asking, not inviting yourself, but asking if you can be a guest on the show. So if you're feeling kind of stumped about what do I write in that email, Brittany, I'd love for you to include a link to my lead magnet called 7 Pillars of the Perfect Pitch, and you will get a breakdown of exactly how to write your pitch to these podcast hosts. And the #1 mistake that I see people make all the time, I'm going to tell you what it is so that you do not do that. I had a client do it last week and I had to get a little in there with them, be like, no, you're going to get a no. So just tweak this thing and then you'll get a yes. So I would love to be able to share that with your viewers today.
Yeah, you bet. We'll have all of your links down below in the description so people can find you and all the amazing things that you have mentioned here. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much again, Lisa, for your expertise. That was incredible. So looking forward to hopefully connecting with you again soon.
This was so fun. And I hope to hear all of you on podcasts in the very near future.
Amazing. Thanks, Lisa.